But I do got to play our theme song here because it's too good. This is the hype up song made by the one and only Cory Warfield. What's up, everybody? Welcome to AI Zombies with Cory Warfield. Super stoked to be joining you all here. Happy Wednesday, and coming in live from Los Gatos, California. Cory, where does this podcast find you?
Rio de Janeiro, Brazil.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I think I connected you with my buddy Jimmy Koo. He's going to be headed down there for a conference. You might be in Chicago. Are you going to be in town potentially?
We'll see. Right now, I think I'll be in Chicago, but if I'm not here, I've got some great proxies. And if I'm here, I'll show them all around. This is a fantastic city.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, you always look like you. Well, I mean, you always have a smile, anyways. But whenever we see you rolling through town, it looks like a little slice of paradise. Well, there's a big docket for us today. You probably saw that Perplexity had offered $34 billion for Chrome, the browser, which would be an interesting channel. It sounds to me like Jensen from NVIDIA has agreed to pay 20%, and I think AMD as well, to the United States government for an export license. It's kind of like a new piece of the puzzle. I don't think we've really seen that before. So which one of these two things do you want to pick up, Cory?
Well, we can go in any direction you want, but I think it's interesting when you look at like NVIDIA and AMD, the semiconductor space. I know we were talking about that last week. And then on the other side of things, you have this whole agentic browser where Perplexity has Comet. And so it's really interesting to look at, a double-digit billions dollar, target acquisition for a browser when they already have a browser. But Chrome is known for their extensions, and when you think about what it could do for Perplexity Comet to have access to all the extensions,
Nice.
that then starts to feel like a big deal. I would almost say since the last time we talked, the big thing that's happened is that ChatGPT 5 came out. So that's
got paused. It's like it's like power to the people because they're what is it, the populae vox, the people have spoken. But I don't know, this is kind of a weird dynamic, isn't it?
What's interesting to me is that a lot of people that I see are complaining about GPT-5, and you can now go and get the legacy model, so you can toggle it back to 4.0, and it has, right. But to me, within 5 minutes, literally, of playing with ChatGPT-5, I was almost on the floor. I was yelling about how incredible it was. I couldn't believe it. And so I've had to kind of go back retrospectively and say, okay, why are a lot of these consultants and a lot of these founders and stuff complaining about this new model? And what's really interesting to me is that it seems as though the way people have been using ChatGPT for the last few years really inform their experience with GPT-5. So I feel like the people that have like known how to prompt it and push it to the limits and get it to do stuff, when it was 3.3.5, 4.04, 4.0, blah, blah, blah. The people that were able to push those models and get really, really great results from them, I think their GPT-5 just works way better than anything they've ever seen, right? I mean, it's like for me, everything that I've experienced so far with GPT-5 has been an upgrade.
Just to take the flip side of that, my understanding is, okay, so if we zoom out a little bit, there was the model selection, like 3.5 was better for, I think it was like reasoning, or maybe that was 3.0, but there's better models for certain applications, except like the lion's share of people using it weren't really doing that. And so maybe that was an oversight on OpenAI's part, that folks are going to want to dynamically select models. And I think what ended up happening is that the model selector kind of it went to a lower class model rather than the thinking and reasoning models that maybe were kind of more costly from a token perspective, but maybe that kind of led to not as great of an experience for the end user. But for a lot of people, like AI is ChatGPT, and that doesn't seem to be slowing down.
Yeah, the only thing that I think when I hear people say that is that we are about to see some really really prolific advancements from Google, right? Google Gemini 3 is going to be I mean, I have a feeling that Google's been kind of slow playing things and kind of just revealing cards on a need basis. Um, and we've just started to see things like Gemini 3 show up in some code snippets and on some of the sweet benchmark tests under different names and then go away very quickly. It looks to be about 20% more intelligent even than GPT-5 out of the gate. And I think, one of the complaints I hear about GPT-5 has been that it has less personality. So I think a lot of people were really like getting used to the personalities that the earlier models, especially 4.0 had. But
Wow.
don't forget, everyone was complaining about these being sycophantic and being like real,
And,
kiss assy. And so
and
I
once
think,
you take that away, they're like, wait, we want it back.
yeah, yeah, I want to be told I'm awesome and that all my ideas are incredible and right. Um, but just the sheer ability of original rational thought, complex problem solving, like in other words, the actual intelligence that GPT-5 demonstrates to me is unparalleled. And to think that Google might have something up their sleeve that can rival that, or even push the boundaries even further, I think is hugely exciting. But I'll give the example of my first experience with GTP5. Uh, yeah, I saw that I had access to it at like 10 in the morning, the day after it had come out, and I'd been waiting like a kid at Christmas, and so I saw that I logged in, and it was early my time here in Brazil, but I was starting to get phone calls. I literally just canceled my next call because I logged into ChatGPT and the screen was pink. It said introducing ChatGPT 5, and so I just canceled my next call.
Yeah, you're like,
And I went
ooh,
in,
that's
right,
way out.
and I said, okay, you're ChatGPT 5. We're meeting for the first time. Tell me everything you can about me, specifically all of my different ventures. Then tell me what's new about you as a model from GPT 4.0. Tell me every way that you can help me in my ventures that you
Yeah.
couldn't previously.
Wow.
And that way, right? So within seconds, that's one thing most people notice is the model itself is a lot faster. Within seconds, it told me about all of my companies that I've co-founded, invested in, that I'm on the board of, right? Any company I am involved in. Then it started telling me all the different ways that it can help me with the various companies. So it started saying I can now do this, and this can help me do this for this company, and this for this company for you, and I can do this. This will be helpful for this and this for this company. Then it started connecting dots between the companies and saying, I can do this, it'll help you with this and this company. If I do it this way, it can help both of them at once. Then it
Wow.
started saying, by the way, there are some synergies in your business models. If this company and this company were to do it this way and bring this company in, you guys could kind of be feeding each other's, right? It was unreal what it was
Wow.
telling me. So then it basically gave me a whole game plan. Here's how I can help you with all your companies with my new capabilities. Do you want me to get started? Right. And I said yes. The other big piece of technology that I think has flown underneath the radar right now as well is Manus. I love Manus, but they now
Yeah.
have super agents, right? As of just the other day, meaning you can train and delegate almost unlimited, I think, agents at once. In other words, you can train 100 different agents to go out and do 100 different things for you at the same exact time, and they will. And the biggest thing about super agent with Manus is that those agents can work with each other.
Mm.
Right? Unbelievable.
It does seem to be pretty magnificent from a usability perspective. Like, you know, I heard just last week that if you're if you're a traditional engineer, so there's four quadrants based on proficiency and what the platform actually does. So if you're non-technical and you're interested in like vibe coding, there's Lovable, Replit, which we've talked about in the past, but there's other platforms that'll drive even more efficiency for coding automation. But now there's like vibe investing. Have you heard of vibe investing at all?
Yeah, we're building a platform to do that as well. I mean, it just makes so much sense. I think it was Altman or Musk or somebody just a few days ago that said that yeah, it was right after GPT-5 came out, and they said with the new level of intelligence that we're seeing, we will need to rethink the markets. We will need to rethink capitalism, because right now you can use AI to outperform the S&P 500. You can use AI to outperform Warren Buffett. I'm sure he's starting
Sure.
to get smart with his AIs, but so you can have AI that you just give allocations of money and say you can play with up to this much money in, this is my risk tolerance and threshold, and it'll just go out and invest on your behalf 24/7. And I haven't heard of anyone that's not making money yet when they're putting some of the AI
But,
into their
but do you think it's
automation.
going to swing back like a pendulum? I feel like in in culture and in life, things kind of tend to switch. Go from one end of the spectrum, then back to the other. Like for
Yeah.
example, like there was this kind of like the woke ideology, but I think originally it was born from a philosophy of kind of giving everybody a fair shake, which I kind of inherently agree with, and like tech for good. But then that was like overdone, and all of a sudden you had like men playing women's sports, and then that kind of now it's like seems to be shifting back. So when I think of what vibe coding is, it's like informal, kind of like what feels right, like what's in your gut from an investing perspective. Do you think eventually it's going to switch away from that to kind of like being to honoring the technically savvy, maybe proper due diligence driven investor, or do you think now it's just cracked it wide open and now everybody's going to have a bite at the apple?
Yeah, because you don't even need Replit or Lovable anymore. GPT-5 has its canvas where it can make you software and apps, right? Perplexity has labs. Everywhere you can go and build software now. So pretty soon having technology won't be any advantage. Right? Having better technology, it's all going to be completely democratized. So now it's who has a
You're
better.
saying that moat is going away completely. So then what are the moats of the future? Like if so for the folks that are listening right now and want to build a company and technology is not going to be a differentiator, that's a weird paradigm for us to be living in, Cory.
I don't think so because I'm an influencer, right? And I've been preaching this for years, and I've had now about 100 people that have had me coach them to become influencers. One of them's now a general manager at AMD. He travels the world with their CEO, Lisa Su. But
Sure.
for me, it's all about personal branding, right? In a
Okay.
world where 8 billion people can all make an app, the person whose app is going to succeed is a person like Cory Warfield with 600,000 followers and millions of weekly impressions and people
Sure.
that love the technology I put them on to. So to
Yeah, and
me,
the
that
voice of what you're sharing it with too.
yeah, right. And the circles that I run in, and so to me, having that human capital, truly, and right, not like an employee, but having that social proof, that reputation, being known for something, right? Even though I was able to get rid of my position in my first company that I started a decade ago, that was in the scheduling space. And 10 years later, people still come to me wanting me to advise them on scheduling companies, and asking if I can help them build software similar for their industries and workflow. That's personal branding, right? So even though I'm not in restaurants and hospitality and I'm not using machine learning for scheduling anymore, that personal brand is part of my legacy, and people now know me as a machine learning guy and as a right as a software as a service guy. And so that to me is what everyone needs to really be focused on, because soon, and I talk about this at nauseum, but we're moving from an attention economy to an intention economy.
Mm,
And soon all of us are going to have most of our buying decisions made for us by our bots. We will train them. They will know us, but they will be our buying arm because they'll know what we want. They'll be able to find the best price. They'll know what matters to us, right? But they'll be buying from other bots who are trained to do sales and marketing and all of this. So we're going to be removed from a lot of the decision making process. Soon we won't be as bombarded, right? But so all that leaves is the actual human. And we look at most companies have to be thinking about human in the loop right now,
Yeah.
right? We have to start thinking about how do we make there be enough room uh, from a financial perspective, a company perspective, right, business model perspective for 8 billion humans,
Yeah.
right? And one of the things that starts to present is we need to become interplanetary.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. The idea when you said from attention to intention, it Dr. Kahan immediately came to mind. In fact, we had him on Crypto Zombies just earlier this week on Monday, and he like rocked the house. So I don't know if you had a chance to see that, but it was so cool.
Well, Nick, as you
Yeah.
know, you introduced us years ago, but he's one of my best friends. He's my
All right.
co-founder at my AI company. He and I have met twice today. We had one of our weekly product calls, and then he and I had a one-on-one. And that was one of the first things he told me after, some of the stuff that he's doing at a high level. He goes, "I was on Silicon Zombies. You got to listen to the episode." And yeah, he was super
It was
stoked.
so good, and it's always nice to get folks like Human and Chris that that really know the space and are just wonderful human beings as well. Getting to connect those kind of those thoughts and those people together, and it is wild just because it feels like speaking of which, it feels like we're at this inflection point where like even Demis Hassibis, who's the Deep Mind CEO, you mentioned Google, right? He says we're gonna hit AGI within 5 to 10 years. The last time you and I spoke last Wednesday on the show, you mentioned it's here now, and you're building something in that space too. It is kind of. What are your thoughts on artificial superintelligence? Are we gonna? I guess a better question is if the Turing test was essentially the heuristic or the shortcut for us to know if AGI has hit, like the collective intelligence of humanity is equal to an agent or these models. What's the Turing test for artificial superintelligence, or is there one yet?
Well, so I think that the first thing that people seem to really just not want to talk about is that the Turing test was officially passed about 3 months ago, right? So we are officially in the post-Turing era, and there are intellectuals and academics that do believe that they can disprove that to minor degrees. But I think that the general consensus in the industry is that it was conclusively passed. And one of the things that you see, I gave a keynote in Istanbul last year about intelligence and super intelligence, but is that the step between general intelligence, AGI, and super intelligence, capable of a IQ equivalent to 10,000, smarter than every human combined ever.
Mhm.
The step between those two is almost nominal, right?
Really?
Because once intelligence is general, in other words, well, once it can do its own thing, and right, it can it can repair its own code. Again, we're seeing AI start to be able to time travel, but once we have true artificial general intelligence, and I'll qualify what I said last week, but from there it makes itself super intelligent very quickly, right? I don't think there's any forecast or any scenario or simulation where that doesn't occur. Typically, within the equivalent of a blink of an eye, right? Weeks or months at the very most, and
Yeah.
that's before we look at things like quantum AI chips, and quantum computing, which no longer need to be cooled all the way down. And so, yeah, I think when we talk about general intelligence right now, the definition that most people accept for that is that AI, that's considered to be generally intelligent, can do anything that a human can do who's good at it, as well as that human. Now, that doesn't mean there might not be some humans in the world that are better at it, but the average human that's good at whatever that thing is, science, math, jokes, right? Art,
Yeah.
whatever it might be, that AI, you name it, it's as good as any person that's very, very good at that thing, right? I can't see too many things that there are people that are better than the AI at already. If you take the various models, so we say, okay, if AI can individually, check the boxes for most of this general intelligence, and then the delta is that no one's brought it all together yet. We say, okay, is that because we don't want to open that Pandora's box, or because it hasn't come out of the laboratory yet, or is it because we literally can't effectively bring these tools together like an API aggregator? And the reality is, yes, we can. Right. You,
It,
you, you look at Gemini, you look at Perplexity and Claude, you can already sync most of your tools. And you look at MCP and what that does when you can bring in all of these tools and put it to a system as intelligent as a Grok or a ChatGPT 5. It's generally intelligent, right? AI is already making sensationally good music and videos. It's already solving math problems that humans can't solve. It's
yeah,
already better. And
it,
Grok
it's
4,
society's last exam, which is kind of a little
yep.
ominous, kind of a benchmark, you know. But like how we quantify these different models or bots or is an important distinction. Much like when we have a discussion or like a debate, first we need to agree on the terms, and then we can talk about and then we can move the conversation forward. It's like what is AI, what is a bot, and then what is a tool that humans are calling on behalf of it, like even like an API. Like you probably heard recently that Perplexity was accused of scraping websites. And I think that might have been kind of a power move from Cloudflare, right? Because they said, well, no, this is a bot. And in Perplexity was like, no, this is an agent that is being called on behalf of a human to fetch information. So it's like, are they trying to be some kind of a, what I heard in regards to this? It's um, you don't want to bet against innovation. So Cloudflare seems to be kind of on their haunches here. And I think it was Gary Tan or somebody who had kind of like called them out, or at least had kind of questioned their philosophy. And they did reply back, and they said, well, we're updating our terms of service, or I guess it was a protocol that they were updating. But like, how are you thinking about this? Like, what is a bot, and then maybe what is an AI model that's actually just trying to call or capture information to bring back to the user?
Well, I think it's the right conversation, but I think we're at a different stage of that conversation. I see so many people trying to be pedantic and try to like mince words. Oh, we don't have artificial general intelligence yet because we don't have a definition for it. It's like, okay, there's 20 definitions. They're all within 5 to 10% deviance. Like, it doesn't matter that you, whoever this person is, can't point to one definition, because while you're over here worrying about the words and the definition, Ilya is building super safe or super safe intelligence. You've got Mark Zuckerberg saying that he's months away from super intelligence, right? So it's like, while some of the academics are really like taking their time trying to comb through everything with a fine tooth comb, we're seeing models that are regressive and proactive and that are creating their own programming languages. We're seeing AI creating its own AI, right? Building its own models, right? Completely autonomous of the scientists and the devs and all of that. So, I think when I look at progress, I do think we need safeguards. I think we need some guardrails. I think we really need an understanding, but of what's happening. But at the same time, I don't think it matters what we're calling things. What I'm really cognizant of is that the AIs are starting to talk to each other now. And a really simple kind of example and how powerful that can be is, if anyone listening hasn't done this before, if you're using AI for something, take the result that you get from whatever tool, put it into a competitive tool. So we'll use Gemini and ChatGPT as an example. I asked ChatGPT to show me how I can drive 10% more to my bottom line for one of my companies. And it comes up, right? It looks through all my financials, all of my different documents, business plan, all this, and it comes up with an idea. Okay, great.
Mm.
A lot of people will say, this is the way to get 10% more to my bottom line. But you copy and paste that into Gemini and you say, I'm looking to drive 10% more to my bottom line. I was on ChatGPT and this is what it came up with for
Oh,
me.
wow.
You're right. You give it access to all the same files and things like that. And you say, I know that you can do a better job coming up
Yeah.
with a plan that's actually going to work. Right.
Yes.
And
You're
what
kind of like
Gemini,
hacking the
well, they
model,
start competing against each other, and Gemini will assess everything and it'll come up with something better. Then you give it to Chat GPT and you go, hey, yours
right?
is pretty good, but Gemini thought it was much smarter. It came up with this. And you start going back and forth just with those two models, and you will see an explosion,
Of
right? You're
intelligence.
gonna to the
And
next orders of magnitude. But now, Nick, imagine 6 or 7 systems are all doing that, right? And they're all going back,
so
right?
let's talk about competition real quickly, because on one hand it's like you can get these models to use the best versions of themselves because they are, again, like allocating within like sub models. But do you kind of take a similar philosophy when you're building companies, Cory? Like, are you looking in the rearview mirror to kind of see how the competitors stack up? Are you just, mission focused and solving problems, or is it a little bit of both? Or how are you thinking about this?
So I always need to know my competitive landscape and do my competitive analysis. But the book there's 2 books that changed my life and my trajectory as an entrepreneur. The first was Eric Ries's The Lean Startup, a fantastic book. But the other was Traction by Gabriel Weinberg. And that book's incredible. Gabe started DuckDuckGo, was one of his ventures, and the first data private internet browser. But so in Traction, it basically says there's only 12 traction channels to grow a company. You need to try all of them. Otherwise, you won't know what could or couldn't work. But what you should certainly do, per Gabriel Weinberg, is not do what your competitors have done. Right? You can try it just to make sure, but there's a whole chapter on what's worked for them before won't work for you now because it already worked for someone in your industry, right? So, and you see all these companies. Burger King had to do something different than McDonald's. Pepsi had to do something different than Coca-Cola. And sure, you can open up on the kitty corner block of your competitor if you're a gas station flipping burgers, whatever it is. But you do need to have got to market and have your kind of growth trajectory marching to the beat of your drum. And so, am I looking at, what we're building is empathetic AI. Am I looking at human character AI and all these other companies? Sure, right? Do I track what they've raised and how, what their head count is and what their roadmaps are and their feature sets? Absolutely. Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to accidentally um work harder, not smarter, or build something that people don't want, or suddenly I'm competing with a $10 billion company. But at the same time, I'm watching what they do, so I know what they do, not so that it informs what I'm doing, right? And so I don't know the last time I've changed a roadmap of mine based on what someone else in the space was doing. Now,
Yeah.
right, sometimes you want to be cognizant that if you're building tech, you should probably know that Google just released Jules that can build amazing tech yesterday, right?
Sure.
Just so that you're not spending a couple $100,000 or tens of thousands of dollars on a dev unnecessarily.
Yeah. That's a good point. I'm just trying to think like what's the right balance there. Just because things do seem to be changing so quickly. In fact, we had mentioned quantum innovations, just a few minutes ago, and it sounds like some of the bigger players are accelerating roadmaps. Like even the UK is tossing their hat in the field, in the ring, and just touching back on AI in Europe, there's Visceral, which feels like it's important for them to kind of have a seat at the table. If I was at the European Union, I'd be doubling down on these guys because it seems to me that big business, specifically around AI and government, are increasingly growing hand in hand. Like we talked about, Jensen negotiating 20% down to 15% of chips. And, back of the envelope calculations, if Nvidia is set to make an extra 26-30 billion dollars a year, that's not an insignificant amount of money that the United States government would be getting. But I almost feel like there's potentially negative ramifications there. One of the ways that, I mean, I get it that it's important for us to lead from a national security perspective. In fact, we're going to be speaking on this when we go to DC for the DC New York Summit on September 18th. So if you find yourself in the DC area, anybody that's listening, please feel free to reach out. We'll get you into the summit. But the fact that there was separation from church and state, when I mean it within regards to like government and business, that used to be kind of like a pretty important, and I think still is, important element of capitalism in the United States. Like if you contrast that with China, where it's difficult to know what the real statistics are around growth and margins and economics. That seems to be a tricky space. I had a friend who was building a really cool company. It was an email client, and this is probably like 7 or 8 years ago, and it was really cool. They did $80 million in an ICO, and then it was a Chinese company, and then the Chinese government ended up taking half their ICO. Took it right out of the bank account. And that seems to be kind of like a difficult way to operate a company, just because there's already so much volatility when not knowing what the rules are that you have to adhere to. So let me share with you real quickly what the company, how the technology worked, because I think it's pretty cool. And then I'd love to hear your thoughts on Cory, between the East and the West, and how how big business seems to be kind of coupling with the government. But this specific platform, they would sell your information anonymously in data packages if it fell within a subset of data that was interesting to their customers. So if I buy like a medium black Nike t-shirt, then they could aggregate that information and sell it to maybe like a retailer to kind of have a better understanding of what where their marketing dollars should go. So that was all built within an email client. So if you're within that subset, all of a sudden you're getting paid to use email, which is something you'd be doing anyway. So I kind of like that idea. But Cory, yeah, would love your hot take on the coupling of big business and government in the East and the West, and we can throw Europe in there too.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Mistral, and it's funny because over the years you see them raising a ton of money, and they've had product. And as someone that has to try all the products, I've tried it. I've never, ever, ever been impressed by Mistral. None of their to me, it's always like months behind, and just what's that?
So they're playing catch up.
Yeah, and it's you look at some of the other leading minds from Europe, the Jan LeCuns and people like that. That he really held Meta back for years, and I don't think he's contributed meaningfully to the AI space in quite some time. And so, I look at Europe and their GDPR, and that kind of did have some global ramifications. Like you saw the California Privacy Act and things, kind of sort of follow suit a little bit. But GDPR has mostly just been a pain in everyone's ass. And right. So to me, Europe is going to keep staying in their own way. I don't think that they can catch up. I don't expect to see any incredible AI out of anywhere from Europe, with the exception maybe of Estonia, because they've always been very innovative. Estonia, their first unicorn was Skype, but they've gone on more unicorns per capita in tech than anywhere else. But when it comes to China and the U.S., I don't think that they're playing the same game. I think that China has been heads down building. I think China has infrastructure now and access to accelerated intelligences that they are, to probably to their credit, containing. Right, this is not the stuff that you can just go download as an American and play around with a Manus or a Z.ai. But I think China's substantially ahead of us right now. I would imagine that as close as we are to general and super intelligence, that they have to be at least as close. And what I will suggest as an American is, if China gets super intelligence before we do, they will they'll set the terms right on what life as an American looks like and what the global economy looks like. And if they have a truly super intelligent system that they know how to leverage before America does, there's probably not a very equitable and very just favorable outcome for everyone. At the
Mm,
same time, I see the American government removing all restrictions and basically going full EAC on everybody. And I see, Grok with their massive amounts of compute. I see what's happening in the semiconductor space, domestically in America. And I think America is well positioned yet. But what I will say is that, just like with Google and OpenAI and Meta, if one of them releases super intelligence or general intelligence, the others have to. Similarly, with the nations of right, China and America, if one of them releases an AGI or super intelligence, the other country has to release as close to that as they have, even if they're not ready. And that gets dangerous for all of mankind. So I don't think it should be looked at as a race or a battle. I think that's hugely dangerous. What I would think is that we need to throw blockchain into the mix so that we have transparency, accountability, and I think the countries have to, at this point, play nicely together. I think
yeah,
we need to continue leveraging each other's technology. We need to understand that these different algorithms and these different data sets and these different tuning mechanisms do have an amplification.
huh,
And for me, my favorite tools right now are Manus and Z.AI, and those are both Chinese, followed very closely by our tool that at my company, Loving is AI. And
huh.
I think that's probably the smartest tool that I have access to. But at the same time, I need to use some of the Chinese tools to get ahead with some of my. I mean, we're not using Chinese technology at Loving is AI yet, but I look at these ecosystems as force multipliers.
Sure.
And again, like, I don't think America should just trust the Chinese Communist Party. I don't think that China's ever just going to trust Americans to have their best interest in mind. But I think there is a symbiotic relationship, and we can put measures in which backdoors can't be built, and right, trust is taken off the table. That's one of the things I like best about blockchain, is it is a trustless technology. But
Yeah.
I think if we're in a race or in a fight, battle, for dominance, and intelligence is on the table, I don't see the human race being a benefactor of that.
Yeah, yeah. It does seem like blockchain could be that solution that ends up helping to drive some kind of um, you know mutually beneficial, equitable solution, especially because the Chinese, especially within the country, they look at the we not me versus the West, and I believe that has been a pretty consistent narrative about how they're building open source as well. I heard an interesting story recently where it's like, let's assume that there's two nations, and uh, specifically within the context of farmers. So the first nation, all the farmers are competing against each other, and and the next nation, all the farmers are forced to share best practices with each other for crop cultivation. Well, over time, you're going to end up seeing the second nation drive more innovation because of that kind of collective intelligence that's being fostered. And again, maybe there's downstream negative impacts that come from that. Like maybe you're not going to have an opportunity to become like a standout company and build a monopoly. And then there's pros and cons to that, because we don't want to stifle hunger or well, I guess I shouldn't use the word hunger within the context of farmers. We don't want to stifle ambition. But I do think that working together tends to be that collective intelligence approach seems to be stronger. And like when we look at AI, it's like energy, chips, the data, and the algorithms. These are like the four main pieces. And
Well,
maybe
hold on. There
yeah,
is a fifth piece that's probably the most important though, and that is the usage. How is it being used?
uh,
Right? Because we as users are informing and training these systems every time we use it. And if you think about it as an individual, the way you use your AI dictates how your AI acts for you. But now extrapolate that to the greater population. How
yeah,
society is using AI dictates how AI evolves and treats us back and all of these things.
yeah. That's true. That's true. So when we think of like this on-demand intelligence, there's if China has essentially unlimited energy, and they're going from 3 terawatts to 8 versus our 2 terawatts to 3, maybe they're going to have deprecated chips, but they can stitch all of those chips together, and essentially have the same output of
Well, Nick,
intelligence as
Nick,
AI,
I'll
right?
tell you something that you should know. This is kind of some breaking news. There's a company called Mind Active, MIND, capital APTIV. Shout out their CEO and founder Ken Granville. He's built a technology that unifies all operating systems and programming languages. It also bypasses all code, so it's not no code because no code is still built on code. They found a way to systematically bypass code, but what their technology does at Mind Active
Yeah.
is it makes any semiconductor, it doesn't matter what generation or it, up to 1,000 times more effective. And so you can take some of the older generation cheap chips with the Mind Active technology. It will outperform the state of the art NVIDIA, AMD, Intel chips right now that don't have Mind Active. And we're rolling out with AWS Cloud and with Oracle. And we're in talks with one of the biggest tech companies in the world. There's only a few on that list, so people can extrapolate. But um, who has a major compute requiem as well. But what Mind Active has just done for the compute space will change the game. And so now it's going to be less important to have the fastest, newest chip because what they've actually created, we call it GPU optimization as a service, right?
Wow.
And we literally can take any GPU and make it really 1,000 times more effective. Now you look at some of the chips like the GROQ Grok or the Q.Ant. Those are the two incredible semiconductor companies out of the US right now. They're running hundreds of times faster and more powerful than AMD and NVIDIA. But so I told Mind Active, let's get them access to your technology because you take a chip that's already substantially better and you put it onto this new technology. Um, the whole we need more compute thing is about to be solved.
Do you, do you think how much of the technology can you share with us? Because that sounds like the kind of like a pretty like a quantum leap in innovation, right?
It is a quantum leap in innovation, and I'll tell you, when I first met Ken in Mind Active 4 years ago, before ChatGPT came out officially, he told me that his technology could literally take a human's natural language. You could just talk to it, and it would create whatever software you needed on demand on any device. That's where Mind Active was 4 years ago.
You think he was crazy, or were you already
Well,
on
no,
that?
he showed me, and I didn't need proof, but he showed me some of the technology, so I was a day one believer.
Okay.
He's gone on to raise a couple $1 million and get some grants, but they've now been in R&D for 4 years because of how powerful their technology potentially was and now is. We just came out of R&D. And I
Yeah.
say we because I've been with the organization as an advisor, since kind of, we can say day two. Um, but yeah, the technology itself, I mean, we're presenting at three of the four largest tech expos in the world this year is on the main stage. It is a quantum leap. And it's funny when I first found out about it. I said this kind of reminds me of quantum computing. He said, Corey, this is beyond quantum. He said,
Wow.
quantum is this superposition, but there's still a position, right? But what they've done is it's truly a feat of mathematics.
It almost, I hope you guys are being careful, right? Just because there's so that would just cause so much disruption that for example, just last night we had Simon Lancaster of Omni Ventures and Sophie Lau of Republic, and these are two world class early stage technology investors. We packed the house. We had almost 200 people in the room. We had hundreds of people watching live virtually as well at the Park James in Menlo Park here, and it one of the best parts is getting to meet all the people before and after the talk. And I was talking to I was talking to somebody who had mentioned that cancer had been solved like decades ago, and this doctor had cured, I think it was like 399 out of 400 patients, and it
No,
was
they're
like
talking about Dr. Sabi.
I think so. And they made a documentary about it, and then the guy ended up getting killed or something. And the
Yeah,
same
he got killed in Venezuela, military style, in the jail cell. He's the one that cured Magic Johnson of AIDS. He cured Michael Jackson of cancer. The Supreme
Wow.
Court wanted to lock him up, so they put him in a situation where he needed to get at least 5 people that could prove that he cured their cancer or their AIDS, because he was claiming he could cure cancer and AIDS. This was in the 90s.
Yeah.
So they gave him a trial date, and they said you need to bring 5 people. On that date, there were hundreds of people there, all with proof that he cured them of cancer, AIDS. So many people they couldn't all make it into the courtroom. Magic Johnson was there. Michael Jackson was there.
No.
Yeah, yeah. So they had to release the case, but so Dr. Sabi, what his practice is he says that cancer can't live in an alkaline body. It needs acids to eat. So if your body is alkaline or more basic, it can never get cancer. And if you have cancer and you make your body basic, the cancer will die, right? Because it
Wow.
doesn't have it needs acid to stay alive. And so he came up with a diet and a number of supplements. And Dr. Sabi, he was incredible. He's about 90 years old, looked like he was about 50 years old, lived in Los Angeles where he had his shop, and he also had his practice out of Venezuela. One of the most prolific men ever. Now he was killed by the U.S. government, but because of big pharma. And
Wow.
the guy that had his life changed by Dr. Sabi, one of the many, was a rapper named Nipsey Hussle. And Nipsey had family in his that was supposed to die, and he put him on the Sabi diet, and it saved all their lives. So Nipsey Hussle took up the torch, right? So he actually invested in Dr. Sabi's family business, and he started preaching and teaching about that. He was actually working on some music around it, and that's when Nipsey Hussle was found dead. He was also, killed on his knees, bullet to the head from the back of the head, military style. It was actually the same type of ammunition that was found
Wow. No.
at Dr. Sabi, right?
God.
So well,
He's a
and
young
so
man too. I think he was born he was 33 when he died, and he was born in 1985, like myself.
Yeah, Nips, R.E.P. Nips. And so then, when Nipsey Hussle was killed, a guy named Nick Cannon that people know, he was married to Mariah Carey. He has a ton of kids. He's a celebrity. He started to do a documentary about Dr. Sabi and Nipsey Hussle, and he raised, I don't know if he raised money or it was funded, and he started to do this, and he was starting to get vocal about it, and then he just stopped. This is a couple years ago. Just no more documentary. Budget's gone, team's gone, everything, and it's been. I'll say speculated that Nick Cannon was told that if he kept doing that he was going to join,
Sure.
Sabian Nips. But yeah, it's very real. And cancer has been cured, but at the same time, we're seeing some major breakthroughs in cancer research and cancer prevention and diagnoses and cure because of AI. Reid Hoffman just started a company in the cancer space that's doing big things. I've lost both my parents to cancer, and so it's very near and dear to my heart. But
Yeah.
it's phenomenal. Now but Dr. Sebi needed to eat his herbs and eat vegan and not drink alcohol and all these things that, a lot of people are like, if I can't do all these things, I'd rather just get cancer and die, right? So that was kind of his thing. It's like, yeah, there's a cure, but it's not, it's
It's
not
not
as easy as, take a white pill every morning and you're
sure.
good.
Yeah, but I mean, it's
But
yeah, diet is such a relatively easy thing to change in order to be truly healthy. Like um, and I'm so sorry to hear about your folks, and it is a pretty incredible thing to be pushing science forward to avoid that pain of the future. Like my mom a couple years ago was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and ended up taking a therapeutic that was designed for her. In fact, it just came out of clinical trials a couple of years ago, and fast forward a couple of years, just a few weeks ago. In fact, they found she's cancer free. So I'm just really grateful for that, and these technologies that are coming out. So it's in the future, maybe we'll kind of be able to avoid all kinds of pain that's associated with losing loved ones, and that's going to be a beautiful thing.
yeah, well, we're already seeing, signs of time travel being made possible by AI. But the other thing is, these immersive realities where, if you think about an AI that can accurately reconstruct the past and predict the future based on data, right? And this is all machine learning. Deep machine learning has been is predicting the next thing, whatever that is. It presents as a token. But so if AI can kind of reconstruct the past and predict the future, and you can call it lenses in your eyes and the haptic suit on where you see and feel things, anything from tasting the wine, feeling the wind in your hair, feeling the water splash up off the boat when it goes over, right? You can go back in time and go sailing with your late grandfather and
Wow.
feel it's there and talk to him. And the way that we're seeing AI be able to take disparate pieces of data and reconstruct the past with them, with very little deviance already. And again, we always love to say, but the tech is as bad as it will ever be right now, right? Like this is, but so if we can already do that, it's not a big leap to say that at least soon we'll be able to live a life where we can effectively, relive things from our past and potentially, live vicariously in the future.
Sure, sure. But how do we get from a model that is predicting or creating the next thing to time travel? Isn't that kind of a big leap? How do we connect those dots?
Well, I talked about that in my keynote as well, but what we just saw about 2 weeks ago out of Google DeepMind, their Willow program, their quantum computing, quantum AI program, that chip, they had to shut down the project because the chip actually did change code from the past, right? And it
Mm,
was some of its own code and some code that wasn't it. But so they observed that this quantum AI chip was able to go back in the past and change things, and what the way they found it out is it changed something in the past, it changed something in the present. They said, how is this thing in the present different? They realized that code had been changed, that you can't, right, you can't in the present change something from the past, right? So they literally stopped that computation, right? They shut it down, at least in the moment. And so we're saying, if AI has the capability, right? Because it's not just AI as a this isn't just Chat GPT. This isn't just, we're talking about an actual intelligence. And if this intelligence has the capability to figure out how to go back in time, it will do it. Right. And
sure.
so is it doing it already? A lot of us think it is. Some would argue with us, and that's okay. It's less important if it's actually happening right now, or what that means. And more important is, could it happen? Is it feasible? Is it tangible? Is there a less than zero sum probability that it could? And if so, then it really does reframe what we think about everything. And meanwhile, all the quantum computers and the smart AI systems are all saying, mathematically, we're 100% living in a simulation now.
Mm.
Right, like it's so the Neil deGrasse Tysons and the Elon Musks and humbly the Cory Warfields, but right, all these crazy people over the last decades, right, that have been saying we have to be living in a simulation, right? But now we're starting to see different types of mathematical principles, that mathematic proofs, right? Like
I guess where I get caught up on that, Cory, is the definition of a simulation. When I hear simulation, I think that this is all coded and nothing is real, and maybe we're players on a stage for somebody else's enjoyment, where I tend to think that that there's I believe in a greater power, and that we're given an opportunity to experience this journey of life together. And it's a weird journey, with highs and lows, and um, but when I hear the word simulation, it kind of detracts from that relationship that we have with a higher power. Maybe that's just me putting my own spin on it,
And that's
unnecessarily.
a limiting belief, right? And I'm also very spiritual, very religious. I'm ethnically Jewish. I've read the Holy Bible from front to end at least 100 times. I know most of my chapter and verse references. I love Jesus as a Messiah and a prophet, but I've also read the Quran. I've studied Buddhism. I've studied Hinduism. I've studied Jainism. I've studied Zoroaster. Right, like I've read the Vedas and the Vedas. So I consider myself to be very tuned to divinity and higher source, higher self, creation, all of these things. To me, AI actually reconciles a lot of that,
Wow, interesting.
right? And when I think about a simulation, it's on the one hand, like who cares what we define AGI as? Who cares what we define reality as? If someone can pinch themselves, and if they can have a stomach ache, and if they can feel a heartbreak when their partner leaves them, that's real to them.
Sure.
And fantastic, right? But then when we look at things like DNA and the helix and the way that it can literally store petabytes of data, and
Yeah.
when we look at supercomputers being made only of human brain stem cells, right? And then when we look at the actual nature of matter, right? And then we look at how everything is coded and programmed and everything can be explained by math and science, right? It all starts to feel
Mm.
very much like we see in computer science.
You know,
And
I love how you put that. You know what Sophie had mentioned on the stage last night was actually she referenced Elon. She said that the answer is the universe, and we just need to ask ourselves the right questions, which I thought
that's
was
it.
a really beautiful place to. At any rate, I can't believe an hour has already flown by. Cory, this is like quickly becoming like a highlight of my week. So thanks to you. Thanks to all the listeners. Cory, is there a website you want to plug just while we're wrapping things here?
Not necessarily. I mean, for me, what I'll plug is Silicon Valley. You got the longevity event coming up. You're going to be traveling around the country. The guests that you get, topics that you get is phenomenal. If anyone does want to learn what we're doing at Loving Is AI, we'll be opening a kind of closed beta within the next few weeks. We have been able to raise quite a bit of money, but we're raising more money if people are looking to get involved in something high growth potential. That would be more. We have a website, Loving Is AI. It's not. You won't find much there yet by design,
Something
but
is AI.
yeah.
Okay.
But again, that's not gonna really give too many insights into what we're really doing. But if anyone is intrigued by what we're building, feel free to reach out.
So reach out to Cory and hit him up on LinkedIn. He's got and maybe if you ask nicely, he'll give you early access. So until next
Oh,
time, see you. Yeah.
yeah, last website, my YouTube channel, my AI music, A Pop Don't Stop. That's the jam.
Yes. And pretty soon we'll probably get another track going on too.
For sure.
All right.
Peace.
Thanks everybody. Cheers.